Observation 1 is the resolution analysis. The ace opponent of the resolution, the People's Republic of China should significantly increase its international partnerships to construct nuclear power plants in North and or East Africa. The B's opponent is the weighing the policy strategies that by should in the resolutions, the weighing mechanisms for the should be net benefits. The C's opponent is the background. The first argument is that Ethiopia is increasing its reliance on hydroelectricity and alternate forms of energy. In the status quo of the Little Andrews is that they've been constructing the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam since 2011, which when completed will be the largest hydroelectric plant in Africa. It sits at the branch between the Blue Nile River, which goes into Ethiopia, which is one of the biggest branches of the Nile River in Africa. The second background argument is that China is already involved in Ethiopia. In the status quo of the Little Andrews is that they're multinational, international. There's multilateral international partnerships already within the country. The Ministry of Irrigation, Water, and Energy, which is an Ethiopian governmental agent, and which is an international governmental agent, and the Chinese National Electric Company have been working to construct landfill reclamation projects, which basically reclaims a lot of biomass stuff that are in landfills for use. This is plain text. Plans that the People's Republic of China will enter a partnership with Ethiopia to build 25 liquid fluoride thorium reactors. People's Republic of China will enter a partnership with Ethiopia to build 25 liquid fluoride thorium reactors. I have solvency explain what those are. So obviously the first argument is that liquid fluoride thorium reactors are a type of nuclear reactor that reacts between like liquid fluoride and solid thorium, which is basically a really effective type of nuclear reactor that is like much better at producing energy much more efficiently than like powered water reactors or any other type of nuclear reactor. China has really easy access to a lot of thorium because of their mining efforts within South Africa and stuff, which where a lot of thorium is concentrated in the status quo, which means this is probably one of the nuclear reactors that they are going to be most effectively at being able to build. Also they're really good because they don't have. Actually, you can just read that. Do you know the solvency?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's like all the stuff for their plan is enacted through normal ways and means. Time frame is as soon as possible. It's all fun plan stuff. You got any questions?
No.
Okay. 2 advantages. The first advantage is grid electrification. Is uniqueness. The first argument is that Ethiopia is becoming increasingly dependent on biomass in the status quo of the Little Andrews. This is that this accounted for 89% of their total energy consumption in 2016. This is a huge part of their. Means that biomass is like a huge part of their national energy consumption. And this is just outside of things that this is outside of like energy that is produced. This is also energy that people use for like their homes if they're like burning firewood and stuff like under their stoves instead of using electrified cooktops or gas stoves or things like that. There's a whole lot of biomass being used in the status quo. This is also due to an abundance of animal biowaste and firewood and stuff, which fills a void in energy demand right now because there's a lot of energy that is not being supplied during peak hours in the status quo in Ethiopia. That means that a lot of people are required to because there are a lot of power outages because energy demand is not sufficiently met because a lot of the energy sources that alternative energy sources that they're using right now are things like solar and wind, which don't turn on during the day or don't work when the wind blows and stuff. So there's a lot of energy deficiency that there's running. The second uniqueness argument is that energy demand is rapidly outpacing production of energy in Ethiopia right now. The country grew 10.8% annually in 2016, which is a huge amount of growth, and they're not building enough. Alternative energy sources to keep up with its demand. The only new thing that they're producing that's on the docket within the energy administration is this huge dam, and it's not going to be enough. It was started in 2011. They haven't made much progress on it. It's pretty problematic. The third argument is that particulate matters is released through the burning of biomass, especially because a lot of biomass is not burned at a temperature hot enough in order to reduce the size of the particulate matter to the level which it does not impact people's lungs, which means that a lot of the particulate matter just stays in people's lungs and settles. This is especially problematic because a lot of the biomass is being burned within the major metropolitan areas in Ethiopia, which means that there's a very dense concentration of particulate matter causes 220,000 cases of asthma annually, which is really important because it's an impact that doesn't go away because once you get particulate matter in your lungs, it's impossible for your body to properly flush it out. Links. The first thing is that the plan fills a long-term gap of energy deficiency within Ethiopia. The Little Andrew. That means that you can cross-apply the analysis that there are no more projects on the docket, which means that after the hydroelectric dam gets built, there's no more energy that's going to be created in the status quo. The little B under this is that the dam is expected to cause massive amounts of ecological destruction because they cut off because they make this huge standing reservoir behind the East Nile Dam, which means that there's a lot of biodiversity that isn't able to get farther downstream and repopulate the ecosystem of the area. The second link is through increased energy sunlight because they are able to fulfill the energy demands of Ethiopia for long into the future, which they aren't able to do in the status quo. The third argument is business confidence because there's no more outages because they have constant energy. They have a constant supply of energy and they're not as tied to however much energy they're able to produce at any big time, which has caused problems for them in the past. Impacts. The first topic is that of health because there's no more particulate matter that is created because a lot of people are able to get energy much more cheaply than can just through biomass, through biomass breeding, which means that there's no more, there's a huge reduction in pollutants that are emitted into the atmosphere because of the clean burning. Second impact is econ because business confidence allows reinvestment. After there was a lot of business flight in Ethiopia, after there was a huge collapse, after their power was out for like 3 weeks and they weren't able to get secure power stuff over there, which is important for growing the economy in the future. Geopolitics. The little a is the inherency. The first argument is Ethiopia's been building the Blue Nile, this dam that I've been talking about for a really long time. The Nile River provides the most water. The Nile River provides most of the water.
But most of the water is Sudan and
the Nile River provides most of the water to Sudan and Egypt and a lot of other countries that are farther downstream from the Nile River. And the little a under this stuff, there's a huge history of water conflicts by water rights. This was the type of thing that was at the heart of the Darfur massacre, which caused 300,000 people to be massacred because of water conflicts. The second inherency argument is the dam diverts the Nile, which also causes tons of evaporation into the reservoir because there's they have to create this huge standing reserve of water in order for the dam to be powered constantly, which means that there's a ton of evaporation, which leads to a ton of lost water, which is especially problematic because the people aren't getting access to water because they're sitting in this huge reservoir evaporating. The third argument is that negotiations have happened in the past, but nothing has happened. The little Andrew, this is that. What is this? The dam is almost complete. It's expected to be completed in early 2018, and that the Egyptian president has said that the military options are on the table because they hate the dam so much because of the threat that it poses existentially to their country because they're not going to be able to get water after the dam is fully created and turned on. The beast opponent that links the first argument is that war is going to happen in the status quo because the plan is going to be made, and Ethiopia is going to have to get a ton of energy from this, and they're not going to have a diverse energy before we see they're going to be using the dam a ton, which means that there's a huge fulfillment of.
They use the dam less.
And the plan causes the dam to be used much less than it was going to be used in the status quo, which is important because then it's going to prevent war. That's an impact, which is going to prevent war with Egypt and tons of deaths, and it stops escalation of water crises in Sudan, which is going to cause massacres for like hundreds of thousands of lives.
Okay, the order is going to be 2 off. Might help.
Okay.
Okay, and sorry, how many off?
3 off.
3 off.
Okay, is everyone ready?
Just give me one. You good?
Are all the judges good?
I'm good.
Okay, starting my time in 3, 2, 1. First off is the natural disasters. This adds uniqueness. First is that natural disasters are on the increase right now. You can look to drought, heat waves, earthquakes, and floods are all increasing across the African region. First is ironically, climate change is actually one of the major causes of this in the status quo that intensifies the frequency of natural disasters right now. Secondly is that Africa specifically, according to the World Risk Report in 2013, that the African region is increasingly threatened by natural disasters in the status quo. But the second uniqueness argument here is that nuclear meltdowns are uniquely vulnerable to natural disasters. First is heat waves, that according to the Union of Concerned Scientists, nuclear power plants require a Goldilocks weather. If it's too hot, then that would inevitably trigger meltdowns. I think there's a lot of science behind this because a nuclear energy reactor is literally burning really hot, which is why you have to pour a lot of water into it to cool it down. Like the heat is literally what generates the electricity for nuclear energy. So I think we're winning on the science here. But secondly is the increase in earthquakes that destabilizes power plants as well because they are unable to activate any cooling systems, which means that nuclear meltdowns are uniquely vulnerable as a result of natural disasters. Third is that literally every nuclear meltdown that has ever happened in the history was because of an accident that was caused by a natural disaster, which is a really good reason why when natural disasters are increasing, meltdowns would also increase. But the links? Oh wait, no. Third uniqueness argument is that nuclear energy is also low in the status quo. First is fears that there's a worldwide disdain for nuclear energy in the status quo, which deters any possible investment into nuclear energy in the status quo. You can look to Japan is also even backing out of nuclear energy is a very good warrant for the second is the lack of funding that these African countries like Ethiopia, for example, has to rely on outside funding to actually develop nuclear energy in the status quo because nuclear plants are extremely expensive. The links. Plan increases nuclear energy, which increases the probability of meltdowns. First is that you solve the key roadblock, which is funding, like I just said. But second is that signals confidence in nuclear energy, which also means investors also increase investment into nuclear energy in into other African regions, which means you spill over into other countries, right? And the second link argument is also kills other renewables investment. First is that when the government is drawing particular attention to nuclear energy, that means investors also go to nuclear energy instead of other renewables, which means that you're crowding out other renewables that are happening in the region. Secondly is price. That government action means nuclear power plants are able to decrease their prices and outcompete emerging renewables that are developing in the status quo. The impact is that nuclear meltdowns are incredibly bad. That first is radiation leaks affect general population. I'll take your question.
Yeah, so like, can you give any examples of renewables that are this is going to trade off?
Yeah, I'll get to that on case. According to the United Nations Scientific Committee, that 6,000 were affected by an initial meltdown in Chernobyl, and that people are still being affected by this today, where they develop like thyroid cancer and these like really horrible diseases which will probably kill them. This second is also turns case that when they talk about like, oh, we increase energy reliability, whatever, you don't. When meltdowns are more likely to happen, that means you're actually going to be less likely to solve for energy reliability, and because you're also like crowding out other renewables. Next off is the uranium dissat. The uniqueness first that nuclear is low right now. The ASO winner here is that the United States has recently shut down three of its nuclear reactors. The BSO winner here is that Nuclear Energy Institute finds that the percentage of world being run by nuclear energy has decreased by 0.5% since 2014. Second, uniqueness argument is that there's no regulations on thorium mining in the status quo. The ASO winner is according to the World Nuclear Association, 90% of the thorium mine has zero regulation. That the industry has no transparency whatsoever. The third uniqueness argument is that thorium mining also hurts the environment. While the ASO wants to produce 75 tons of this, they must dig up 100,000 tons of waste material. That's like also true for like mining in general, which means that you're going to be linking this anyway. That is worse than methane emissions in the status quo. The fourth uniqueness argument that thorium mining is also very unhealthy. That the ASO winner here is that digging up the waste has like a poor waste removal system, which means that workers are inevitably going to be exposed to radioactive material and the particulate matter that they also talk about, which is another reason we have to turn case to links. The first is the plan increases thorium mining needed, that nuclear energy literally requires it to run, which means that like to have nuclear energy, you need to have the materials that like run the nuclear power plants, which means that you're inevitably going to be increasing this the material needed and increasing mining. The impact is going to be first out of health that you expose these workers to dangerous types of radiation and particulate matter, which also turns case because it's your exact impacts in your first advantage. Secondly, it's also going to be very bad for the environment because to mine in general means you're also going to be like removing lots of mountains, removing lots of biodiversity. That's how mining happens. Yeah.
Can you give me your source when you're saying like the specific thorium mines or like you have low regulation that you're digging?
Yeah,
all that
a
stuff?
World Nuclear Association.
Cool.
Counterplan. The People's Republic of China will enter a partnership with Ethiopia to build 500 solar panels, and Ethiopia will shut down the Nile Dam. The People's Republic of China will enter a partnership with Ethiopia to build 500 solar panels, and Ethiopia will shut down the Nile Dam. We believe this competes through net benefits because we've read a lot of arguments why nuclear is really bad, which means like any investment into nuclear energy is a reason to reject the perm because nuclear energy is bad. Instead, focus on other renewables. Solvency. We think the counterplan is entirely possible because China is the largest producer of solar panels in the status quo, and they also control the most rare earth metals, which is the internal link to building solar panels in the first place, which means that the counterplan is uniquely solvent and is able to solve the entire of the affirmative case because we are still filling in the energy demand gap that exists within the status quo. Yeah?
Yeah, so what type of solar panels are these in status?
Normal. They will be normal means. Normal means solar panels.
Can we have a text?
Yeah. You want to take this?
And is it on condo?
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Okay, new sheet on case. Status quo solving right now. First, the United States startups have already started solar panel systems in African regions. The ASO points that Reuters says that solar power will increase by 600% by 2020 in Africa. Second is that Africa has the largest potential for solar power. The ASO points, according to Atlantic, that they have the most clear skies and the strongest sun, which mean and the continent also receives like 40% of the world's sun rays, which seems to shield any of their arguments that solar is bad. Third argument right here is that North Africa has some of the best wind power in the world. Wait, I'll get there.
Don't.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read that. Never mind. Okay, go to their first advantage. The argument I want to respond to here is about how solar wind is unreliable. However, the storage is actually improving because companies are already making technological innovations that are able to store the energy generated by solar panels, which means they can use it for a later time, which means even if there is like a cloudy day or whatever, they will still be able to rely on solar batteries that they already have the energy storage to be able to solve for like energy reliance. Next, do you say the plan fills the long-term gap? However, we've already turned this argument that nuclear energy is actually a lot more unreliable because it's more prone to meltdowns because natural disasters are actually increasing the status quo, which means that you don't fill the long-term gap at all, and you only crowd out other renewables, which is going to be incredibly problematic. And onto their second advantage. I think the counterplan is able to resolve the entirety of this. If Ethiopia just stops building them, I think it solves this. And also, the other plank of the counterplan is also able to solve this because we invest into like a different type of renewable energy source that is going to be preferable. So for all those reasons, we urge a strong vote for the app.
What's the order?
That's a good question. Let's see. So, let's just go off on an order. That sounds fine to me.
I like it.
Sorry, what? Okay,
So the counterplan on the-
counterplan first?
Counterplan was last,
Okay.
so last for me as well.
Natural disasters, thorium, counterplan, top case, add one, add two.
Yep. Okay. Any questions about order? You all good? Cool. Anybody not ready? Time starts now. First, go to natural disasters. On the uniquest point, they say that nuclear meltdowns is going to actually happen due to heat waves and due to natural disasters. I'd like to point out a few things. First of all, there's only been like 2 nuclear meltdowns that's actually happened in history. This is like a super high probability at the point where you have like hundreds of nuclear power plants that are operating around the world in the status quo with no problems. There's only been like a couple of meltdowns. They should need to actually provide you empirics on how much natural disasters is actually going to go up to actually cause these meltdowns in the future. Also, the specific instances they cite are heat waves, which aren't actually going to cause nuclear meltdowns for a few reasons. First of all, in the instances with like Fukushima where there's actual meltdowns, that's because of tsunami and everybody had to evacuate. There are heat waves, you have nuclear technicians that actually just shut down the plants and actually just pull the rods out. That means you're never actually going to see meltdowns from the heat waves that they're talking about. Like the cooling system's default, yeah, the nuclear power plants stop functioning. The thing is, these cooling systems really good. These cooling systems like self-powered by actual nuclear reactions, which means they're super good and they're actually capable of keeping things really cool, meaning you're never actually going to see meltdowns to the heat waves. That's the one scenario that they go for. Additionally, lifters are kind of a spike against this. You might have think we chose lifters for a reason. The specific way the lifters function, they're built on kind of like a bed of ice, so actually when you actually stop like cooling down the ice, the reactor melts down in the sense that the thorium rods and the rest of the reaction just separate. You don't actually have a meltdown. The lifters are specifically designed so the cooling system goes bam, the reactor doesn't melt down. Yes?
Yeah, so basically what you have is you have like the thorium plate over here, then you have the liquid fluoride up against it, and then when the cooling system tanks out, then like the two
Basically,
separate.
you have the thorium plate and then the liquid fluoride, and then when the cooling system tanks out and the ice melts, then the liquid just falls down. It doesn't actually melt down. Spikes are kind of good. Anyways. Also, they never actually substantiate where the probability of meltdowns is high when the empirically meltdowns haven't actually happened a lot in the early scenario that they give you heat waves that don't actually trigger meltdowns. You probably shouldn't be buying this advantage. They should be doing more analysis and shouldn't be able to extend analysis. Just substantiate the links. Next, thorium.
Answer their argument that like this crowds out other removals.
Wait, did they?
They make this argument out.
We did.
Oh, right.
It doesn't
Okay.
have no other removals.
Cool. Actually, I'm gonna hit that on the sheet at the top of case. Cool. Go to thorium. Okay. I'm gonna do mitigation here. This is probably true. Yeah, thorium mines are bad. They only affect like a few people. You're just mining up these small portions of Africa. They're just the mines. It's mostly localized and it's not affecting a ton of people. There's only so many miners. Also, like a lot of their impacts are kind of silly. Like they say that you're going to be exposed to particulate matter. A specific particulate matter link is like the actual burning of biomass. They're not actually creating a lot of the links here. Also, the thorium mines do have safety regulations, right? People aren't going to be exposed to a ton of radiation. Like they never provide you a coherent story about how this affects tons of people. You don't have meltdowns in mines, right? Go to the CP. First, they build 500 solar panels. Solar panels are not big. So I can fit like 5 solar panels on my roof. We're building 25 liquid fluoride thorium reactors. They provide, like 2 or 3 gigawatt hours of energy. There's no way that 500 solar panels could actually be anything comparable to these type of energies that actually be able to supplied by the nuclear reactors. So there's no way this actually solves the entirety of the app. You need to invent like super solar panels in order for this to work. They're only funding 500. There's no way a solar power farm can actually keep up with liquid fluoride reactors that are like, that big, right?
Normal means solar panels also don't have great battery efficiency either.
Normal means solar panels, they're not that big. They don't have great battery efficiency. Next response, permutation. Build 25 liquid fluoride thorium reactors, 500 solar panels, and stop the building of the dam. It's just better. And net benefits, I'll get to the net benefit. This is both a response to the sheet on top and to the CP. Nuclear power and solar power are fundamentally not interchangeable. Basically what happens is nuclear power is what's called base grid generation. Basically, it's super expensive to ramp up and ramp down, but once you actually get it running, it's super easy to actually generate, and additionally, using the power is not very expensive at all. Additionally, the energy is not that reliable. The energy is pretty reliable. However, compared to solar panels only actually generate during noon and during the peak hours of the day, meaning that it can actually fill demand gaps during the end of the day. So you need both spiking power to take care of demand gaps, and you need power that actually runs the whole time. These are fundamentally incomparable. They're different types of power that take care of different types of spikes in the grids, meaning you want both of them. Therefore, the CP actually the perm actually solves better because it deals with demand spikes, and it actually deals with the base load power that Ethiopia is having problems with right now. Yes?
Also, lifters are the only way to ensure long-term stability given the rapid rate of Ethiopian growth.
I don't know what that means. All right.
Yeah.
Given the rapid rate of Ethiopian growth, lifters are the only way to actually ensure long-term stability in energy. We actually massively overproduce the energy needs right now with the lifters that we're actually building, which accommodates for growth, and they don't actually do this. Go on to grid electrification. Their only argument here is that storage solves. Yeah, the problem with this is we've been trying to develop actually good batteries technology for like 20 years, and we've made very little progress. There's still not actually viable batteries for solar technology. Additionally, their normal ways and means does not include battery technology. They need massive amounts of funding to actually create these batteries, and they also probably relink into like the rare earth metals DA. They don't actually fiat funding, which means batteries probably don't happen, and even if they do, the perm is still beneficial. They're not building anywhere near enough solar panels to actually accommodate for the demand gap. Additionally, they make this meltdowns response, which basically says, okay, we're turning case because of meltdowns. I like to point out, like, you're sequestering nuclear reactors, right? You know, they're not in all communities. And the point where you're like electrifying the entire grid, and you're actually making it so that, grid electrification actually happens across the entirety of Ethiopia, the magnitude of grid electrification probably outweighs all the stuff that they're talking about, especially when meltdowns only affect really specific areas. Yes?
Extend this boost business confidence, which leads to long-term Ethiopian stability for econ.
Yeah. They don't touch any links or the impacts. Basically, those all flow through. You extend business confidence. You actually make it so that all this kind of flows. Or you make it so that you're actually developing more energy in the long term, and you're actually making it so that you're filling demand gaps. Also, they don't respond to any of the points about health or the economy. Flow those through. Yeah.
Can you explain this idea about grid electrification a little more?
That's pretty broad.
Well, you say
Why
that
does
solar
it-
panels cause grid electrification. Can you explain why that?
Well, yeah, they do cause grid electrification.
What is grid electrification?
Right now, people
you-
don't have access to power.
Yeah.
Okay.
You give them power.
Nuclear energy gives them access to power.
Near intrusive uniqueness on why you don't have enough power in the status quo. Next on geopolitics, they say the CP solves cross-planar response, where I said that solar panels don't actually meet the demand gap. 500 solar panels, not enough.
Which one?
The natural disasters, disadvantage CP, and then case in order.
Do you want to put the solar panels, high potential for solar panels on the top?
That's on the CP.
Cool.
And I have an overview on the top, but we will be brief. All right. Start time now. The affirmative massively mishandles the thorium disadvantage here when they don't make any actual defense here or any offense here, which means that you're going to be voting on the thorium disadvantage because it kind of turns the entirety of their case, but moreover, it has environment impacts that they don't account for. Furthermore, they've conceded a bunch of arguments about how solar panel investment is going to be solving for the energy crisis in Ethiopia, which means that the advantages they talk about, we still solve for. But let's go into the thorium disadvantage. Now, the story here is pretty simple. Right now, thorium energy is very low. When the plan passes, there's going to be more investment in thorium energy. There's going to be more thorium energy coming into the world, which means the lack of regulations and the thorium mining that hurts the environment, all of those different sorts of things are going to be exacerbated under the affirmative plan text. Now, my opponents have one response to this, really. And they say that, well, there are very few people that are going to be affected by this, which is kind of a problematic answer at the point at which we're thousands of people are going to be mining for these thorium things, which means that thousands of people are going to be affected by these health detriments that can cause radioactivity, causes cancer, all those different sorts of things. But furthermore, there are environment impacts here that they don't account for. Look to the environment impacts where we specifically talk about thorium mining hurts the environment because to produce 25 tons of thorium, you must dig up 100,000 tons of waste material. That is worse than for the environment than methane. That's going to be really bad here when you look at the impacts for environment. First of all, for environment, there's a tipping point right now. When we're melting icebergs, at a certain point, the negative feedback loop becomes so bad to a point where sea levels rise, and that causes a lot of climate refugees, causes thousands of people to migrate. Furthermore, this is going to be really key for agriculture. At the point where increasing heat means agriculture is a lot harder to do, but furthermore, sea levels rising means agriculture is a lot harder. That's also going to be hurt for the food, the amount of food in the world. That's going to be causing a large amount of famine, all those sorts of things. Look to the fact that the environment is going to be the biggest impact in today's debate round. They don't account for it. It's going to be killing millions of people, if not causing extinction specifically because of the sea level rise. Okay, now let's go into the natural disasters disadvantage. Okay. So my opponents have a couple of responses here. The first thing they say is that there are only 2 nuclear reactors that have shut down, but specifically look at my partner's analysis about how specifically in Africa, it's going to be a lot worse. Look, there are no nuclear reactors in Africa for a reason, right? It's because there are so many heat waves and because Africa is so susceptible to these types of natural disasters that hurt nuclear reactors the most. According to the Nuclear World Association, heat waves are hard to predict and strike very quickly, to a point where nuclear reactors cannot react to them fast enough to shut down. That's going to be a huge detriment to their case at the point where this completely takes out all of the arguments they make about how nuclear reactors can be solving for all of the energy problems here when heat waves are going to be shutting down all of these nuclear reactors. That's going to be really bad. But second of all, look to the argument that earthquakes are also increasing the status quo, and that's also going to be a huge takeout to the effectivity of natural disasters. But furthermore, thorium doesn't solve heat waves. Because heat waves are sudden and massive spikes in temperature to the reactor itself. The workers can't stop that because the spikes in temperature are going to hurt the reactor no matter what. That's always going to be a solvency takeout because at least heat waves are going to be stopping these reactors. But furthermore, it's going to be a turn because these nuclear reactors are going to be shutting down and causing thousands of deaths. Okay. So go on to, so the impacts there essentially is going to be turning case, but it's also going to be causing thousands of people to die, extending the radioactivity argument to make under what happened under Chernobyl. That caused a huge amount of radioactivity that had a huge amount of health impacts. So when they're talking about health and talking about biomass, you're going to be looking to our case here for why health is going to be the worst under the affirmative. Go on to the counterplan text. My opponents make a couple of arguments about how 500 solar panels is not enough, but specifically looked at the arguments my partner makes about how creating 500 solar panels in Ethiopia is also going to be spurring a huge amount of other development, and also looked at the arguments we talk about here, the status quo right now is solving, that there is a huge amount of solar panel development already in Africa, which means that it's not just these 500 solar panels, that right now there is a movement to create more and more solar panels in Africa, and that's already solving for the energy crisis in Ethiopia. My opponents also bring up this point about how normal means lack of battery efficiency. Extend the arguments my partner makes about how there's currently a huge amount of innovation in battery efficiency, but furthermore, they give you no empirics about how normal means is going to lead to battery inefficiency. Don't buy that argument. Finally, they also talk about the PERM, and they talk about how the PERM is going to be solving better. First, extend the net benefits. They're still linking to natural disasters. They're still linking to the thorium disadvantage, which we specifically don't link to because we don't need thorium to create solar panels. But also, they say that they're going to be solving better, but they don't have any responses to the simple fact that, one, solar panels will be able to solve for the energy crisis in Ethiopia, but second of all, nuclear reactors will never, ever have any hope of solving for this crisis because of the 2 DAs we read. Also, they talk about this type of long-term stability and talk about grid electrification, but they really failed to expand what grid electrification is. We think it's going to be good if we provide more electricity to these people, so solar panels are always going to be solving there. Also, solvency here, they literally have no reason why our counterplan is not going to be solving. Okay. On the topic case, really quickly extend all the status quo solves arguments we already made about how there's 600% increase in solar panel production by 2020. That's going to be a huge reason why the energy crisis in Ethiopia is going to be solved at the point where they don't provide any reasons or any specifics as to how much energy they need. We think 600% increase in solar panels is going to be solving that. But also look at the fact that Africa specifically has the largest potential for solar panels because they receive so many solar rays. Go on to the F case. Their first argument is about biomass, and they specifically talk about how we need to be solving for energy production. Look at one, the CP solves this, look again to the DAs, but they also make this argument about how battery storage has been improving extremely slowly, and it's been 20 years in little progress. First of all, look at Elon Musk and Tesla creating these battery storage that is becoming more widespread in the US, showing how battery storage is creating a lot of progress. But even if you don't buy that right now, there's progress. Look at the fact that increased investment in solar panels is always going to be creating more progress, and how battery, because of the fact that solar panels are so widespread across the US, we see that battery is pretty solvable issue and is being innovated right now. They also talk about how we're going to be relinking to the rare earth minerals disadvantage that we read, which is simply not true because you don't need thorium to create solar panels. Yes.
Yeah. So does your counterplan bring these batteries along with them, or is your counterplan just solar panels? I thought it was the NC register.
Our counterplan is just solar panels.
Yeah.
Okay. Going to the links here, they talk about how we talk about how nuclear meltdowns are specifically going to be turning this link here about the long-term gap because one, nuclear meltdowns mean that you're never ever going to be able to solve for this, but two, we're also going to be solving for this here. They have impacts on health and on the economy. First, look to all the health arguments we make about how the health is going to be way worse, but also weigh the environment arguments first, about the environment is going to be causing more and more death around the globe, not just in Ethiopia. That's always going to be where you're going to be voting first. So for all those reasons, I just want to vote for the engagement.
Okay, the order is going to be an OSAD, the counterplan, the natural disasters SAD, and then advantage one. Ready?
Sorry, yeah, sorry, repeat that.
an overview on top, which I think you should flow, the thorium disad, the counter plan, the natural disasters disad, and then advantage 1.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
do that one more time.
So it's disad thorium, counter plan, disad natural disasters, grid electrification.
Yeah. Okay, everyone ready?
Wait, where'd top case go?
Doesn't exist on my side.
Add two, by the way.
Okay.
Everyone ready?
For now, anyway.
We good?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm timing 3,
Oh,
2.
sorry.
So I'm timing 3, 2, 1. Thorium disad will outweigh the entirety of the affirmative case. The act of mining, something they've completely forgotten in this debate round, it is massively environmentally destructive and will collapse biodiversity, which means, and furthermore, there's too much defense on the case for you to vote affirmative at all. The first disad still acts as a solvency press against the entirety of the affirmative because if nuclear reactors start melting down, they don't have any more solvency. Furthermore, when you combine the counterplan with the status quo, it is also able to shield any of their defensive arguments, how, oh, the counterplan alone doesn't solve, but remember that status quo investment also exists, which is something that you've completely forgotten about. Go to the uranium disad now. We are in the Octas of NPDI. Do not let them get away with spending 20 seconds on this disadvantage. You can extend the entirety of the link scenario across. They go 100% conceded, which is the reason we have 100% probability in this debate round. Now, go to the impacts where we're going to completely outweigh you. Mining is really problematic, where I literally tell you in my speech that we remove entire mountains. That's literally how mining works. You can look to my partner-specific articulation that thorium mining is uniquely bad because it requires a lot of waste material to be removed. Like, think about this. Do you think that much thorium exists in like our Earth? Like, no, it doesn't. Which means they have to remove a lot of mass away. Which means that mining from thorium is uniquely destructive. Furthermore, there's no regulations on that in the status quo, which means that this is going to be uniquely environmentally destructive, which is going to outweigh our magnitude because we can't survive if there's no environment for us to survive on. But furthermore, you have also to look to the health of these miners. These aren't the people who are just mining it, but also people who have to handle it and transport it across the entirety of Ethiopia. Which means that this is still a very large magnitude impact. And also, you should probably look into probability first because we have a 100% strength of link, and it's probably something that is like ongoing systemic violence that is happening right now. Probability should always come first because if you just like look to the highest magnitude impact, that is very problematic because like everything both causes extinction and leads to causes extinction and solves for extinction at the same time because the world is inherently unpredictable. So we should look to issues that are most proximal to us. That's high probability impacts, which only we are able to control because we are the only team that's winning a direct link into this argument. Go to the counter plan. The counterplan is able to solve the entirety of the affirmative. I think there's still a link to be drawn here where we are able to generate more investment because we have already arguments about how status quo investment also exists, right? Which means if the People's Republic of China also signals, hey, we think solar panels are a better idea to put into Ethiopia, I think a lot of other investors would also be on board with which means that the counterplan plus status quo solves arguments are able to shield any of these solvency arguments against the first advantage. Natural disasters is set. This still acts as a solvency press against the affirmative because you can look to the fact that they don't even answer our earthquakes arguments, that earthquakes will still destabilize all these nuclear reactors. Doesn't matter if there's ice or whatever anywhere because if there's an earthquake, you still shake everything up and the entire reactor still collapses. It's not like ice makes you invulnerable to a nuclear meltdown, which means meltdowns still happen, which means that you still do not solve anything because all these earthquakes and these natural disasters are increasing, which means that uniquely in Africa, you will cause all of these meltdowns. We don't have empirics, sorry, because nuclear reactors don't really exist in Africa yet, which means that, like, if you do it, it's bad. Also, you can extend the trade-off argument across. I don't think they've grappled with this argument because it basically says that if you increase nuclear reactors, that decreases the price of nuclear energy, which outcompetes the emerging renewables market that exists right now, which means that you are still causing a very tangible trade-off where other renewables do not exist anymore, which is still a reason why you do not solve the entirety of energy reliance. Go to your Okay, go to advantage 1, which is biomass. They do not explain their grid electrification argument at all. Do not let the PMR explain it. I know Neeraj is very knowledgeable on this subject, but Leo did not do a good job of explaining it for you, which means they do not have any answer for why nuclear is going to be any more reliable. Look, if nuclear reactors keep melting down, and also I think this is a turn against them because if everyone relies on like one nuclear reactor, because that's kind of how the grid system works, it means if one meltdown happens, that results in a lot of people not getting power, which turns the entirety of the affirmative case. Yeah.
New argument that reliance on a single nuclear reactor is a turn to the aft because it creates energy dependence is a new argument in the PMR. There was no articulation that was a turn in any, or that was even argument in any constructive speech.
That's just like based on their explanation of how nuclear reactors operate, just doing analysis there. Yeah. Okay. Resuming time Furthermore, the counterplan and the status quo are already able to solve for the entirety of this advantage, and we also outweigh your health and BizCon impacts because the counterplan also creates business confidence. There's no reason why only 500 solar panels somehow going to link into is somehow not going to solve for business confidence. On their second advantage, they have conceded this one mandate on the counterplan, which talks about how we shut down the Nile Dam anyway, which means they don't touch this argument, which means that you should probably still flow it through, which means the second advantage literally doesn't matter in this round. For all those reasons, vote next.
Followed by their thorium. Actually, before all of this, can you put natural disasters on the top? I just have some quick stuff.
So natural disasters, then the overview?
Is the overview
So
that?
wait, so natural disasters advantage 1.
Natural disasters overview with advantage 1. Followed by their mining DA. Followed by topic is solvency counterplan.
Public place.
And then counterplans on bottom.
Advantage 2 command team.
Oh, okay. So hold on, let's it's okay.
Can you put the timer where I can
Anyone not ready? No offense on natural disasters, you shouldn't be voting here because lifters have built-in things that allow them to get around any of the situations that they read that could lead to a nuclear meltdown. No heat waves because they have ice that separates the two components of the reaction. This also happens during an earthquake, which is the situation they go for. There's no offense that they can get that can lead to a natural disaster through a nuclear meltdown here. Don't let them go for it. Overview. The overview to this round that solar panels will never solve. Leo gives you 2 really good reasons as to why this is true that make solar and nuclear energy fundamentally different. They exist within 2 different sectors of the economy and of the energy market. This means that one will not be able to replace the other, and only nuclear energy is able to solve the long-term economic systemic impacts. The 2 reasons he gives are, first, energy demand. Ethiopia is developing at such a fast rate that they need an energy supply system that is going to be able to work into the long term. The negative team's counterplan only provides 500 counterplans, and then the rest of it just comes from status quo inertia. They never give any examples of how many gigawatts are going to be provided under the status quo or the counterplan, and they never give any fiated method of storing the energy that they even provide, which means there's probably very little reason to believe that this counterplan is going to be able to ensure long-term stability for the Ethiopian economy. But second, remember Leo's analysis on the duck curve, which basically says that the energy demand during the day is mostly what goes to solar and wind and other types of renewable energy, but this is not able to supply energy during the night because there's no battery technology that exists that is able to solve it now. They say that in the future it'll come, but the technology is necessary right now because they need to get out of an economic recession that they've been suffering since the economy last collapsed because they didn't have enough energy to supply it.
They concede there isn't any funding for batteries in the status
They
quo.
concede that there is no funding for batteries in the status quo. Solar is just not able to solve the same way that nuclear energy is. Go to grid electrification. Most of the debate happens at the link level, so just go to the link level. They say that like storage is improving, but we say that you never fiat anything because you don't give any funding for batteries. They say that we just increase investment into batteries and it's going to happen inevitably if solar is going to happen, but you don't increase it at all. There's no reason to prefer the counterplan if that is true. Additionally, they say that turn on because of meltdowns cross-apply my analysis that I just made at the top of my speech on why meltdowns don't make any sense, which is an extension of Leo's argument. Then on the health, they say weigh environment first. This is really important. Because we're impacting out to 222,000 cases of asthma annually through particulate matter released through biomass, while they're impacting out to a really small number of miners who might get thorium radioactivity poisoning.
They say thousands.
They say thousands. These, in terms of impact differential, these 2 things are like not comparable. Like the impact that we impact out to through the burning of biomass is probably much more significant than their impact out to thorium. Additionally, remember the argument that there is ongoing pollution in the status quo because of particulate matter through biomass. That is something that is going to continue under the status quo or the counterplan. That means that people are still, with 100% probability, if you vote for them, going to be continuing to have these really bad impacts where they're not able to breathe because of the amount of biomass emissions that are released under them. That's that functions under their high probability impact framing, which is a detriment to their, which is an impact deficit on for them, and also serves as a good thing for us because we have the risk probability of solving in that situation because like the status quo, which is really bad right now for people's health, and any motion away from that is probably better than counterplan or status quo. Go to uranium.
Or thorium.
Thorium, sorry, yeah. They say that we don't make any responses on this disadvantage, but they concede both of Leo's pieces of terminal defense at the bottom of case. We say that biomass is probably worse because of the way that it has pollutants, you know? Like the thorium mining emissions and environmental destruction is probably contained to the thorium mines, but when you have particulate matter that goes up into the air and is like able to float through the sky, that is probably able to reach a much larger area than the thorium disadvantage that they read. They don't read any arguments about the scope of this type of impact, whereas we read you arguments from the beginning in the 1AC on how biomass is probably specifically worse. Additionally, you can extend Leo's argument on how safety regulations check back for this because China has been doing a lot of thorium mining and stuff in the past. You know, they have the infrastructure set up, they have regulations in place. There's no reason to believe that they're just like are going to like mine the hell out of like the earth like they are in the past. There are ways that they've been checking this in the past, which like is really important because that means that they have no offense on this argument. These are two pieces of terminal defense that they concede because biomass is definitely worse and because safety regulations are checking with that. That means that there's no link onto this disadvantage. All right, 30 seconds. What's up?
Geopolitics impacts. They concede.
Yeah, like you can just go over to geopolitics because I've touched the counterplan solvency and stuff throughout, and I've touched this quotient argument through the duck curve on the overview. On geopolitics, you concede the fact that water shortages was at the heart of like the Darfur massacre, and if you don't move away from anything like that at all, you concede scenarios that lead to inevitable war with Egypt. This is really problematic because the only affirmative is able to solve through the exchange demand gap.